Welcome back to Question Period. The highly anticipated federal budget is still 5 weeks away, but what might be in it is already being hotly debated on Parliament Hill.
Well, my mother, as a substitute teacher, sometimes taught math, and she would not be happy with the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report today, Mr. Speaker. The PBO reports that the deficit is now 2/3 higher than the one Trudeau left behind.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by wishing the mother of the Leader of the Opposition happy birthday. I have good news for his mother, Mr. Speaker. We cut our taxes, Mr. Speaker, along with 22 million Canadians.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer, meanwhile, presented his latest forecast this week. You heard from Jason Jakes earlier on the show. He estimates the feds will post an annual deficit of $68.5 billion this year, up from $51.7 billion last year. The PBO called the fiscal outlook, quote, serious and unsustainable. So what about the politics of it? The Scrum is here to talk about that. Stephanie Levitz is a senior reporter for the Globe and Mail. Joel-Denis Bellavance is the Ottawa bureau chief for La Presse, and next to him, David Coletto is the CEO of Abacus Data. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Steph, budget has informed a lot of debate so far since the House of Commons returned. What did this PBO outlook and the way in which he described it do to that debate in your view?
It takes away some of the government has been trying to position the budget as transformative. As you know, I think the finance minister keeps likening it to a period of time after the Second World War, and this is going to be a generational investment, and that language makes it seem like a positive, right? And then you have the PBO coming in with the numbers, with the stark numbers, and saying this isn't great for our nation's fiscal outlook. This is going to be difficult to swallow. There are going to need to be major cuts or raising revenue. What does raising revenue mean? It means raising taxes often, and that stuff's really difficult when the government is trying to frame it as something that is going to change this country for the better.
And those numbers, according to your own reporting, you were the first, JD, to even talk about the possibility of like $100 billion deficit, which is $40 billion greater than the PBO is even saying.
Yeah, and those numbers are really striking because it would be one of the most important deficit in outside of COVID period. And the PBO report, I think, will drive make it more difficult for the government to win the battle of communication against the oppositions. But what I'm told is that maybe they plan to do what they did the last time around, which is to reveal some excerpts of the budget ahead of time so that people don't focus only on the deficit numbers, but on the measures that are in the budget. So watch out for that. Before the 4th of November, expect the government to try to drip some news, positive news about investments and not spending.
That's ironic because the last government, when they tried to employ that strategy, the focus ended up entirely on the deficit number on the day of the budget because all the news had already come out. So interesting, we shall see. I think from a political perspective, to me, it has long now been, since the first Justin Trudeau election, an interesting question, I think, David, to think about, like, do people care? Ultimately, and I think that could be context dependent on what's going on with the economy, what's going on in their own lives with their jobs, and also how big the deficit is. But do you have a gut feeling about how much people care about the debate right now over the budget in the House of Commons?
Well, I think first of all, we did some polling that shows they expect the number to be big, they expect the number to go up, they feel like it's unsustainable. So I think they've been primed to know that there's a problem. But your question of do they care versus other things, I'm not sure. And that's where I think I have a different view of what the government might be doing here, that if Pierre Poilievre makes this a new crisis, does that actually prime Mark Carney, who is actually seen as more competent on a lot of these issues, to lean into the idea that, well, they're the risky option. Where they're going to take the more responsible path to dealing with this fiscal mess we're in. And so I think there's risk on all sides, that if you raise this issue to a point where the public is actually going, holy cow, there's a real problem here. The last time that happened was around Trump, and who did they choose? And so that's where I'm like, this is not as easy and simple a deficit's usually seen as a bad thing, but I'm not saying the government's using this in their favor, but I'm not also sure that Mark Carney gets pinpointed with the blame, because most people don't necessarily associate him with most of those choices that the previous government made. I mean,
it's actually a fascinating point, Steph, because whether or not they do now, because he'll have to make a series of choices. Do we keep all of the spending programs that the big ticket items that the Trudeau government had put in place, because he says he will, but then also how do I position myself in the way that I have communicated I am a much better manager of all of this stuff? Like I don't see clear evidence of what what conclusion they've come to on that front? I don't know if you do.
Yeah, I would say to the point. I mean, if you're getting to $100 billion, let's take that number as your deficit spend. So what happened to the part about fiscal restraint? What happened to the part where the Prime Minister kept saying the previous government spending was unsustainable, we have to rein it in? Now you're pushing that spending line even further. So I would submit, will seek to make the case. We're talking about defense spending. We're talking about things that will juice our economy, wean our reliance off the Americans. These are all fine and well, but somewhere in there then as well, there are going to have to be cuts. And perhaps, with what happened with the announcement with Canada Post, that's a bit of a taste of it, right? Where they made a choice that may be politically unpalatable, but it also might not be, because people are looking for the government to cut spending. How much will they accept in those cuts when it starts hurting them directly?
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, they have some latitude, JD, right? Because they have pre-positioned the sort of, particularly the Prime Minister in the lead up to and through the election. Like, the most critical things he said about the previous Prime Minister and the government was around the management of the economy, and more specifically the management of spending. Yeah. So there is some latitude there, but to Steph's point, like, we live in a country where people say they want one thing, but then the second the service is gone, they're like, what?
Yeah, that's why this is going to be the most difficult test for the Carney government. And you're right in saying that Mr. Carney described Mr. Trudeau as somebody who does not understand the economy. So he wanted to have a real rupture with the precedent government. But we're still not in a very, it's going to be a big number, but we're still in a, enviable position compares to other countries. But will that satisfy Canadians? And we're talking about investments, but how long will it take before Canadians have the dividends of those investments? Probably a lot of time. And so does the government have enough time on its side to explain to Canadians that here's are the investments, it will pay dividends, but be patient. So it's going to be a very difficult exercise in communication, that budget. People are saying that comparatively, the 1995 budget of Paul Martin might resemble the kind of challenge in terms of communicating it effectively to Canadians.
I also take your point, David, though, around like it might not be the traditional slam dunk for the Conservatives that it has been in the past, only because it's almost like a proof point for, Mr. Poilievre versus Mr. Trudeau, in contrast to Mr. Poilievre versus Mr. Carney. Like, regardless of the fact that the Conservatives really wanted them to be one and the same in the eyes of Canadians, the election result kind of bears out the idea that people don't, at this juncture, perceive them that way.
They don't, and I mean, after the first 2 weeks of the House and them calling this, the same Liberal government, they are trying to graft, Mr. Trudeau's baggage onto Mr. Carney's brand, but so far I don't see evidence in the polling that it's working. Like the Liberal numbers are holding, and approval rating for the government is holding among those who voted for him. But I do think that one of the things the budget has to do is demonstrate to people that there have been meaningful tightening. Right. And so this confusion over attrition versus job cuts, attrition is a hard signal to send, because I think they are saying, look, we're not going to cut transfers to individuals or provinces. We're going to protect the things you need the most. But at the same time, if they are going to be able to back in that competence brand and defend that competence brand, I think there has to be some signal, and people have to recognize and understand that there has been some restraint in this budget. And a huge number like that, if that's the only thing people see, they might not be left with the feeling that this was actually restraint. This feels the opposite.
Right. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Guys, great discussion. Appreciate it very much. Our Sunday Scrum, Steph Levitz, JD Bellavance, and David Coletto. When we come back, the three things I'll be watching for this week.